South Africa's transition from apartheid to democracy was based ultimately on a set of constitutional negotiations. So between 1992 and the end of 1993, whilst negotiating what the future democracy would look like, we actually negotiated what we then called an interim constitution. It was this interim constitution which acted as the basis for the first democratic elections, the 19th anniversary of which we will celebrate on the 27th of April. And that happened on the 27th of April 1994. Once the first democratic parliament was elected, we then entered into a second phase of constitution making and crafted the constitution which governs South Africa today. And amongst the ambitions that we set for ourselves is one which is reflected in the preamble of this constitution: to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundations for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by law. Improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person. And finally, build a united and democratic South Africa, able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. The South African challenge and narrative in many ways acts as a microcosm, although we have our own unique history of racial oppression and exploitation amongst our people for over a century in our kind of context. The political negotiations in some ways introduced political democracy to South Africa. But in many ways, our prime objective was to ensure that we create a democratic environment, a democratic state, and place democratic power amongst all the citizens of South Africa. What we didn't do was negotiate the economic transformation of South Africa and ensure, as many other independent countries in the African continent and elsewhere also, didn't and couldn't actually ensure that there was an agreement about how economic transformation would occur, by which we mean changing access to economic opportunities, changing ownership patterns in South Africa, narrowing the economic gap between previously privileged and marginalized people. And in a sense, we followed an uncharted course, which we are still pursuing today and learning lessons from. Interestingly, 2013 is the 100th anniversary of the Land Act of 1913. It was the 1913 Land Act introduced by a union government backed by the British government of the day, which began placing 87% of the land surface in South Africa in the hands of a minority white population, and left 13% of the land in the hands of the majority black population, a configuration that has influenced our history for the last 100 years and which still remains one of the unresolved issues in the South African context.